Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 best early Ark tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10, I've decided to put the Rex, as I find this is generally a very admirable creature to have in any given scenario, and it's been in the game for just such a long while. It's been in the game since it's been released, so it's almost been in the game for 9 years now. It's a lot of games in one sentence, isn't it? But either way, this is the creature which would get you through all your bosses. This is the creature that you would look up to because you're like, come on, we'd have to get yourself a Rex, because the Rex is, or at least one of the gold creatures that you would be going for in the early stages of Ark, and it really still does stand up to that to some regards today, although it has lost a little bit of its popularity with ease of taming and other creatures coming out, which you might just say are simply better. But there were some other good options at the time. Obviously things like UTs and all of that didn't exist at all back then, and you know, that's a 2017 creature, which is far too late for this list. I'm pretty sure all the creatures on this list are 2015, but there might be a few that maybe just peek into the 2016 era. Next up, we have got the Quess. As I found when this dropped, still in 2015, at least when I checked the dates the last time, it was still 2015, and it really does hold up as being a really great Ark tame, and it did kind of shake the scales a little bit when it released. Nothing really like it had been released before, and that's why it really stands so well as a creature. Like, look at this thing. It is a flying animal in which that you can put a platform side on the back of it. You could build your own base on the back of this thing. That was just so mind-blowing at the time, and it really deserves a place on this list for that for me. But due to it just being a little bit later on, and then also a nerf quite soon after, I do have to demote it quite a lot. And there are just some other creatures which I thought were a lot more exciting, and this concept was definitely very exciting to me, but it didn't really grip me the most. But I still have to put it in here, as it did make a lot of impact to a lot of Ark players. But I rarely used this thing at the time, and I rarely use this thing now, and I rarely have. I'm sure we all know the Dmoradon. This actually made a massive impact on me when this was first released into the game. I was like, wait, what? This tiny thing, and it can just do so much damage and attack creatures, and I used this all the time. I would have like a whole big massive pack of Deinonychus behind me, and then boom, like that, they would all go in on those creatures. And yes, I definitely lost a few in my time, but I really did enjoy using these creatures. A very nice, neat addition, and still a 2015 Ark tame. In at number 7, we have got the Ichthyosaurus, and this really did captivate me as someone who enjoyed the Ark Ocean at the time, and I maybe know that's not the best thing, especially for a beginner, to look out to, because, you know, the Ark Ocean is a very hostile place, but back then there really wasn't all too much in it and to it, and you didn't get, obviously, those birds, I can't remember the name of them now, that would steal all your stuff. Not sure when the jellyfish and electric eels were added, but you did have like plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, megalodons, and obviously the Ichthyosaurus when it was added. At least I'm pretty sure it wasn't around once the game was released, but still a 2015 creature nonetheless, I'm sure of. This was the first creature, as long as I'm right, to include the passive tame, and that added a lot to the sense of the game, and it was a really cool ability, and I still remember it to this day. The passive taming ability, or not really ability, but method, was a nice thing to have, and it really felt like the game was evolving, pun intended, because obviously the title was evolved in it, and it was a nice step in the right direction for us, and we really enjoyed this creature. And I say we because everyone that I know when this came out was really excited about this creature. It was a fast, agile underwater mount that could be tamed really easily, and it offered a lot of support with underwater exploration. Very good early tame. Speaking of the Megalodon, I've decided to put on this list as well, as I really did love this creature. This was the first underwater mount I ever tamed. Named it Bruce, obviously, because you've got to name it Bruce. The shark in Jaws was called Bruce, so you've got to name all your sharks Bruce. At least that's the way that I look at it. What's your name for your Megalodons, actually? Because I want to know. Comment that down below in the description, or in the comments, actually. You can't comment in the description. Don't know why I said that, but yeah, comment that down below. Would you name your Megalodons, or do you have any funny or interesting names for any of your creatures? As I have a couple, I've probably hinted a few of them in the videos, but I want to know what yours are, because I know people that have loads of weird named creatures. I'll give you one right now. The Titanoboa, no Titanoboa, it's a danger noodle. Always, that was one of my favourites. The Megalodon has since seen a TLC though, since its release, and now it does the bleed ability, but I still really loved it back then. I didn't even know what a bleed ability was back in those days. As far as I'm concerned, that wasn't in the game at all, apart from maybe the Giga had it when it released, something like that, but that might have been a later edition as well. The Giga was also later on the list, by the way, but let's continue. Now, I'm sure we all know what our first flight was, and in number 5, I've decided to put the Tanon Slapbang in the middle, because I feel like it deserves this spot on the list. It will be your first flyer in Ark. At least it was the first flyer in Ark that you would be taming back in the day, as, to be honest, pretty much everyone was playing on the official rates, really, unless you were playing single player. I think there was still that 2.5x multiplier since the game's been released. Either way, not too sure. The grind was definitely on back in those days, though, and you'd have to grind a lot to even get yourself a Pteranodon, let alone an Argy, but we'll get onto that later in the list as well, by the way. And this was just pretty much your only first flyer that you'd be getting. You would bowler it or trap it in some way, and then after that you would knock it out, and then boom, you get that saddle. And that chitin and keratin was the hardest part of getting this thing, probably, at least in my opinion. Obviously getting to the level of the saddle was just a tremendous exercise to get to at the time, as well as getting to like 35 or 40 I think it was, because they grouped levels in 5s and 10s really in those stages of the game. Like you get loads of stuff at level 25, and then you get loads of stuff at level 30. Kind of glad they changed it, because you get stuff at all different levels, and obviously it's a lot more organized now. Did you prefer the old system? Do you prefer the new system? Give me your take on that, because I'm definitely a very new system for Ark stuff. But, you know, your preference might be the old stuff, if that's your thing. Would you rather just get loads of stuff? Actually, let me rephrase this. Would you rather get loads of stuff at level 25, or get stuff at level 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25? Just as a collective. Or would you rather just get everything at 20 and then 25? Would that be better for you? Or would that not be better for you? Comment that down below, because I'm inquisitive. Continuing on, I have decided to put the Spinosaurus, as I really did look up to this creature in my early stages of Ark. You might think, well, the Rex is that go-to all-time creature where it's like, you know, the Rex is my goal tame, that is the only creature I'm going to go for. Why possibly would I go for anything else? Well, the Spino was really one of my go-tos back in the day. It just seemed bigger and scarier and able to do more damage, and just a beefier creature. It really just was one of those tames where I was like, I really do love it for all of its attributes, and I did definitely enjoy it as an Ark creature. To have this thing on your side was absolutely insane. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and when I first tamed one, I was on top of the world. I couldn't care less about my Rexes. Obviously I still kept care of them, but the Spino was the new business in town. It could just do everything that I needed it to. It was a really great underwater tame as well, so I felt the Ichthyosaurus and Megalodon were a little bit more obsolete, although I still did use them quite a lot, as you know, you could get around still very easily with those. And you know, I had that kind of underwater base setup that Squid had in his old Ark videos from back in the day as well. I did actually find that to be quite nice for me, actually. But the Spino still did kind of replace a lot of creatures for me in a way, or at least take a lot of the attention away from them, you could say. And again, this creature has had a lot of TLC, mainly just actually the form of one TLC since it's been released, a model change as well on top of all of that, and it really is for the better. It is a much better creature now than it was back in 2015, but still, I really did love it, and it was a really great early addition to Ark, and I'm pretty sure it was definitely, actually I'm like definitely confident that it released with the game. In number 3, we've got the Carno, and I just love this creature to death back in the day. I really did just sort of need one of these things. I was basically just completely reliant on having a creature like the Carno for me. It was a go-to of mine, and it still is a go-to of mine. It is held to the test of time, and I really do love it as a creature that came out in the very early stages of Ark. Again, very confident that this was just released with the game. It has also had a lot of TLC too, in the form of one TLC update, where now it's got the bleed ability, and it just generally is a bit more well-rounded. I'm not sure if it's had a model update. It definitely had a texture update, at some point midway through 2015, maybe going into 2016 at that point, and that was actually quite exciting to see. But the Carno really did just excite me as a creature, because I had loads of raptors at the time, but they kept getting killed, and it really wasn't something which I wanted to keep taming. And I saw the Carno and I was like, right, I'll get one of those. Looked at where the shadow level was and I was like, maybe I shouldn't, but I was like, no, I'll still get one. And then it followed me around everywhere once I obtained one, of course, and I would take it on metal runs and all of that, and just let it attack something, get its level up, because that's kind of just what I did to level up creatures back then. You know, I just take them around with me and just tell it to kill things. It really did also just make my life a whole lot easier as well, which just added to the overall benefit of this creature and how much I loved it. And then when I finally got that saddle, it was just so nice to ride around on these creatures as well. And then I could progress onto things like Rexes and Spinos, because allos weren't a thing at this time whatsoever. I think they're a 2016 addition to Ark, and the Carno really did rule the roost, and I still think it's quite high up there for me, and actually for me, superior to the allo. In number 2, we've got the Argentis, and this is again gone through TLC with a model update and a whole host of new features. Not sure if I actually did have the Smithy as a saddle when it first released. I think the Castoroides was the first one to gain that, but maybe it gained it at the same time or at a later date when the TLC stuff happened. And I'm not sure if it had all the weight reduction, but it definitely had a very high weight stat, and it could pick up a huge amount of tames, much more than something like a Pteranodon, and it really was just an upgraded Pteranodon in my eyes, more stamina, more weight, and because you could crank the speed on these things, because movement speed on flies was still a thing. Really do wish that that was still a thing that you could do, because I just loved it so much. And I still, obviously, every time I'm playing single player or if I'm running a server or something, I will always have fly speed leveling on, and obviously player speed leveling now if I'm doing ASA, which actually I do little of. I mainly stick to Survival Evolved because I'm just enjoying it a lot more right now, and I am playing through Gen 1, and you can't really do that on Survival Ascended at the moment. I'm playing through it again, obviously. I have done Gen 1 before, and the RG really just was the kind of gateway to the best fire on the map, and that's why the Quetzal really didn't land too much for me, because I felt the RG did everything it needed to do for me, and I didn't need something like the Quetzal. Yes, the Skybase was very cool and inventive, but maybe not quite what I wanted. And in number 1, we've got the Giga, because this is, in my opinion, really deserving of this spot. It is just a go-to Ark creature for me, or at least it was back in the day. Now I kind of tend to stick to the Carnosaurus. And come on, this thing still released in 2015, yes, later on in the year, and it was an absolute monster. It was just so fun to get. The Rex and the Spinos sort of seemed a bit obsolete with a creature like this. It was so massive, and it might have done the bleed ability back then, but I'm not sure. The wild ones, obviously, because the tame ones had no bleed ability whatsoever. And obviously the wild ones were a lot more powerful than once you got the same ones, but you didn't really notice that at the time. You would just absolutely decimate all the creatures in the area, and that rage buff was actually a really cool, nice, neat ability you'd be crediting a lot of the time. At least I was. I thought that was a very cool addition, and it really made the Giga more immersive as a creature, where now it just kind of seems to be an annoyance. And it really didn't feel like its stamina was too awful back in the day. I never really encountered that all too much. I'm not sure if it was reduced or something like that, or just simply a placebo on my part, but I really do find that with stats like stamina and weights, they always felt higher back in the day. I'm not really sure why though. And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Macy-Juski, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.